Captain David Miller stared at the main screen of the UES Defiant, watching the swirling dust of the asteroid belt hide his ship from enemy sensors. His gray hair and the deep lines on his face showed the weight of the past 6 months. The Defiant floated silently among the rocks, its engines running at minimal power. "Sir," called out Emily Martinez from her station, "we're picking up another distress call from the Coalition fleet." Miller nodded slowly. They had been hearing these calls for days now. Each time, another Coalition battleship fell to the Void Collective. Each time, the messages became more desperate. "Play it," he ordered, his voice rough from lack of sleep. The ship's speakers crackled to life. "This is Admiral Zaxstall of the Coalition Defense Force. Our lines are breaking. The Void Collective has destroyed our primary fleet at Sector 7. They're unstoppable. To any ships in range, we need immediate assistance. The fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance." The bridge fell silent. Rachel Sullivan, the weapons officer, looked up from her console. "That's the 3rd fleet they've lost this week, Captain." Miller walked to the front viewport, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. Through the reinforced glass, he could see the asteroids that had been their home for the past months. The Defiant was humanity's last warship, and no one in the galaxy knew they were still alive. "RIA, give me a status report," Miller said to the ship's eye. A soft blue light pulsed on the main console as RIA responded. "Ship systems are at 89% efficiency. Our modified stealth systems are working perfectly. The Void Collective sensors still cannot detect us through Robert's improvements." Robert Wilson, the chief engineer, smiled proudly from his station. His unauthorized modifications to the ship had saved their lives more than once. The Defiant was now a strange mix of basic human technology and reverse-engineered alien systems. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. "Captain," Daniel Cooper called from navigation, his young face lit by his console's glow. "There's a Coalition diplomatic vessel approaching our position. They're using old human frequencies. They're looking for us." Miller straightened his uniform. "That's impossible. Everyone thinks we were destroyed at the Battle of Proxima." "Sir," Emily interrupted, "they're broadcasting a message, text only." The message appeared on the main screen. "To the UES Defiant, we know you survived. We tracked the distinct radiation signature of your modified engines. The galaxy needs you. Humanity needs you. Please respond." The bridge crew looked at their captain. Miller rubbed his chin, thinking hard. They had stayed hidden for good reasons. The Defiant wasn't meant to face the Void Collective's massive ships. They were outgunned, outmatched, and alone. "Captain." Aria's calm voice cut through the tension. "The diplomatic vessel is small. No weapons detected. Single life form aboard. They're powering down their engines." Miller took a deep breath. "They've risked everything to find us. Cooper, bring us out of the asteroid field, but keep our weapons hot. Sullivan, if anything feels wrong, you fire first and ask questions later." The Defiant moved slowly through the asteroid field, its hull occasionally reflecting the light of distant stars. As they emerged, they saw the small Coalition ship waiting for them. It was barely larger than a shuttle. "They're hailing us," Emily reported. Miller stood in the center of his bridge, straightening his back. On screen, the face that appeared belonged to a woman in elegant diplomatic robes. Her expression showed both relief and urgency. "Captain Miller, I am Ambassador Linda Hayes. Thank you for answering our call. We need your help desperately." "Ambassador," Miller replied carefully, "the Defiant was reported destroyed for a reason. We're one ship. What could we possibly do against the Void Collective?" Linda's face showed a glimmer of hope. "Captain, sometimes the oldest weapons are the most effective. Your primitive ship might be exactly what we need. The Void Collective has never faced anything like you before." Miller looked around at his crew. He saw determination in their eyes, mixed with fear and curiosity. They had been hiding, surviving, but maybe it was time for more than that. "Tell me more, Ambassador," he said. "Tell me why one human warship could possibly make a difference in this war." The fate of the galaxy hung on what she would say next. Ambassador Linda Hayes stood in the Defiance conference room, her hands moving quickly as she showed holographic images of destroyed Coalition worlds. Captain Miller and his senior staff watched in silence as planet after planet appeared, each one bearing the scars of the Void Collective's attacks. 3 months ago, they destroyed Centauri Prime, Linda said, pointing to a burning world. 2 weeks ago, they broke through our strongest defense line at Arcturus. Our most advanced ships, our best weapons. Nothing works against them. Robert Wilson leaned forward, his engineer's mind already working. What makes their ships so special? Linda pressed a button on her device, showing a massive black ship that seemed to swallow light itself. The Void Collected ships use quantum-based shields and sensors. They can detect any advanced energy signature from light years away. Their weapons? She paused, her voice shaking. Their weapons tear apart the fabric of space itself. "So why come to us?" Rachel Sullivan asked from her seat. "The Defiant is just one ship, and not even our best. We're running on half-broken systems and patches." A small smile crossed Linda's face. "That's exactly why we need you. The Void Collective's quantum sensors are blind to simpler technologies. Your nuclear weapons, your basic radar systems, even your radio communications, they're too primitive to be detected by their advanced scanning systems." Miller crossed his arms. "You're saying we might have a chance because we're too basic for them to notice." "Precisely." Linda brought up another image, showing Void ships destroying Coalition vessels. "Look closely. Their ships target anything giving off quantum signatures or advanced energy readings, but simpler objects. They pass right through their sensor net." Emily Martinez studied the tactical displays with growing interest. Like trying to catch a mosquito with a satellite, they're looking for such advanced threats that they've left themselves blind to the basics. "How did you find this out?" Miller asked. Linda's expression darkened. "We sent a research team to study debris from one of their attacks. They found an old human cargo ship, completely intact, floating among the wreckage of our most advanced destroyers. The Void Collective hadn't even seen it." Daniel Cooper whistled low. "That's why you tracked us down. The Defiant is probably the only warship left in the galaxy that's advanced enough to fight, but basic enough to slip past their defenses." Araya's blue light pulsed as the AI joined the conversation. "Captain, I've analyzed the data. Ambassador Hayes is correct. Our hybrid systems operate below the quantum detection threshold she describes." Robert nodded excitedly. "Those unauthorized modifications I made, I had to work with basic materials. I couldn't replicate the Coalition's quantum tech, so I just enhanced what we had. We're running advanced systems through primitive channels." Miller stood and walked to the viewport, watching the stars. "Ambassador, what exactly are you asking us to do?" Linda joined him at the window. "The Void Collective's main fleet is gathering for a final push into Coalition space. If they succeed, they'll destroy every advanced civilization in the galaxy. But their command ship will be with them. If we could destroy it." "You want us to get close enough to hit them," Rachel finished. "Use our primitive status to slip through their defenses." "It would be a one-way trip," Linda admitted quietly. "Even if you succeed, their fleet would still be there. The Defiant wouldn't survive." The room fell silent. Miller looked at his crew, seeing the weight of the choice in their eyes. They had survived this long by staying hidden, by being careful. This would mean giving all that up. "How many worlds are at risk?" Miller asked. "Hundreds," Linda replied. "Billions of lives." Miller turned to his crew. "I won't order any of you to do this. It's volunteer only." Robert spoke first. "My modifications got us this far. I want to see how far they can take us." "Someone needs to shoot those arrogant aliens," Rachel added with a grim smile. Emily and Daniel exchanged looks before nodding their agreement. Araya? Miller asked the ship's eye. The odds of success are approximately 3,427 to 1 against us, Araya responded. However, I find those odds strangely acceptable. Miller turned back to Linda. Well, Ambassador, it seems you have your volunteers. Now tell us exactly how one obsolete human warship is going to save the galaxy. Outside the viewport, distant flashes of light marked another Coalition world falling to the Void Collective. The Defiant's crew watched, knowing their time hiding in the shadows was over. It was time to remind the galaxy why humans had once been feared among the stars. 6 months earlier, Battle of Proxima. Robert Wilson crawled through the smoking maintenance tunnel of the Defiant, carrying his toolbox in one hand. Above him, the sounds of battle shook the ship. The Coalition fleet was losing badly to the Void Collective, and the Defiant was caught in the middle of it all. Robert, Captain Miller's voice crackled through his radio. Our main drive is failing. We need power now. Working on it, Captain. Robert wiped sweat from his face and reached a junction box. Around him, pipes leaked steam and wires sparked dangerously. Araya, show me the power readings. The eye's blue light flickered in the tunnel. Main reactor is at 12% power. Shield systems are failing. Hull breach on decks 3 through 5. Robert opened his toolbox and pulled out something that didn't belong on any human ship, a piece of salvaged alien technology he'd been studying in secret. It was a small crystal that glowed with a faint purple light. What I'm about to do isn't exactly in the manual, he muttered. I should inform the captain, Araya said. No time. Robert connected the crystal to the ship's power system using basic copper wires and a modified circuit board from an old Earth computer. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the fancy ones. The crystal pulsed, and suddenly power surged through the ship's systems. But instead of flowing through the advanced circuits most ships used, it traveled through the Defiant's older backup systems, the ones Robert had modified with parts from junkyards and trading posts. On the bridge, Emily Martinez watched in surprise as her console lit up with power. Captain, we've got energy readings I've never seen before. Hull breaches ceiling, Rachel reported from weapons. Shields are back up, but they're different somehow. Captain Miller gripped his chair as the ship stabilized. Different how? They're not running on quantum energy like modern shields, Daniel said from navigation. It's like we're using old Earth force field technology, but supercharged. In the maintenance tunnel, Robert watched his jerry-rigged system work. The alien crystal powered their systems, but because it ran through primitive human technology, it created a unique energy signature. The Void Collective sensors, designed to detect advanced quantum technology, swept right past them. Enemy ships are losing track of us, Emily reported excitedly. Their targeting systems can't lock on. Miller leaned forward. How is that possible? Robert's voice came through the comm system, slightly out of breath. Captain, remember those modifications I mentioned? The ones you said were too risky to try. Robert, Miller's voice grew stern. What did you do to my ship? I made it invisible, sir. Well, not exactly invisible. More like obsolete, but in a good way. As the battle raged around them, the Defiant slipped between enemy ships unnoticed. The Void Collective's massive vessels, with all their advanced technology, couldn't track what they saw as primitive energy readings. Sir, Emily said suddenly, the Coalition fleet is retreating. They think we've been destroyed. Miller looked at his damaged but functioning ship. The Void Collective had already killed most of humanity. The few survivors lived as refugees in Coalition space. If everyone thought the Defiant was destroyed, all hands, Miller spoke into the ship-wide comm. We have a choice to make. Right now, everyone thinks we're dead. That means we have something no one else has. Surprise. Robert had made his way back to the bridge, his uniform covered in grease and burns. Captain, these modifications, they're not pretty, but they work. We're running advanced systems through basic technology. It makes us invisible to their best sensors. Like trying to find a paper airplane with a quantum scanner, Rachel added. Miller nodded slowly. "AI, can you maintain these systems?" "Affirmative, Captain," the AI responded. "While unorthodox, Robert's modifications are stable. They appear to provide significant tactical advantages against Void Collective technology." The bridge crew looked at their captain, waiting for his decision. Through the viewport, they watched Coalition ships jump away, leaving them alone in the battlefield debris. "Plot a course to the outer rim," Miller ordered. "We're going to disappear for a while. Learn everything we can about these modifications, and when the time is right." He smiled grimly. "We'll show the Void Collective why they should have paid more attention to humanity's primitive technology." The Defiant turned silently, its hybrid systems humming with power. As they slipped away from the battlefield, none of the Void ships noticed the small human warship that carried an impossible advantage. The perfect blend of old and new, basic and advanced. That would one day give them a chance to save the galaxy. Present day, UEA's Defiant War Room. Emily Martinez stood before the holographic display, moving her hands through the glowing images of Void Collective ships. The rest of the crew sat around the table, watching as she explained her plan. "Their main fleet gathers here," she said, pointing to a cluster of red dots. "The command ship stays in the center, protected by over 300 warships. No advanced ship could get within 1,000,000 miles without being detected." Ambassador Linda leaned forward. "But the Defiant isn't an advanced ship, not in the way they measure such things." "Exactly." Emily smiled and zoomed in on the fleet formation. "They arranged their ships to detect quantum signatures. Their sensors look for advanced energy readings, complex shield patterns, modern drive signatures. But they don't look for simple radio waves, basic nuclear power, or old-style thrusters." Robert raised his hand. "Like wearing infrared goggles but missing someone standing right in front of you with a regular flashlight." Simple, but brilliant. Araya's blue light pulsed as the AI spoke. "Their over-reliance on advanced technology has created a significant blind spot." Emily pressed a button, and a new image appeared. A massive debris field near the Void Fleet. This is what's left of the Coalition's Third Fleet. Thousands of destroyed ships scattered across space. The perfect hiding place for one small, primitive warship. Rachel studied the tactical display. "We could drift through the debris field using minimal power. They'd read us as just another piece of wreckage. Until we get close enough," Daniel added from his seat. "But what then? Even with surprise on our side, we're still just one ship." Emily's expression turned serious. "That's where things get interesting." She brought up an image of the Void command ship. "Ambassador Hayes provided us with intelligence about their quantum shielding. It's incredibly advanced. Nothing in the known galaxy can penetrate it." "Nothing advanced," Miller corrected, beginning to understand. "Right." Emily highlighted several points on the massive ship. "Their shields are designed to stop quantum weapons, energy beams, plasma torpedoes, all the modern stuff. But old-fashioned nuclear missiles, simple kinetic weapons, they'd pass right through like the shields weren't even there." Robert laughed. "They built their defenses so advanced that they looped right back around to being vulnerable to the basics." "There's more," Emily continued. "Their ships are powerful, but fragile. They rely completely on their shields. The actual hulls are thin, designed only to house their quantum technology. One good hit from a primitive weapon would tear them apart." Rachel finished, a predatory grin spreading across her face. "And we just happen to have a full load of good old-fashioned nuclear torpedoes." Linda nodded. "This is why we needed you. Any Coalition ship would be detected and destroyed before getting close. But the Defiant, we can walk right through their front door," Miller said, "because they're too advanced to see us coming." Araya's voice carried a note of concern. "I feel compelled to point out that while the initial attack may succeed, we would still be surrounded by their entire fleet. The Defiant would not survive the counterattack." A heavy silence fell over the room. They all knew this was a one-way mission. What if we didn't have to survive long? Emily suggested quietly. She zoomed in on the command ship again. Their fleet operates on a quantum network. Every ship is connected to the command vessel. If we could overload their network. Robert jumped in. A massive nuclear detonation next to their command ship wouldn't just destroy it. It would send a power surge through their entire network. Their own advanced systems would tear them apart from the inside. At the cost of the Defiant and everyone aboard her, Miller said softly. Emily looked at her captain. One ship to save the galaxy. Isn't that worth it? Miller stood and walked to the display, studying the Void Fleet. He thought about Earth, destroyed months ago. About humanity, scattered and nearly extinct. About all the worlds already lost to the Void Collective. "ARIA," he said finally. "Run the numbers. What are our chances?" With the current plan. The AI paused. Success rate is approximately 12%. However, that assumes we reach the command ship undetected. If we're spotted early, success rate drops to 0.1%. Miller turned to face his crew. "Those aren't good odds." "Better odds than anyone else has," Rachel said firmly. One by one, the crew nodded their agreement. Even ARIA's light pulsed in what seemed like determination. "Very well." Miller straightened his uniform. "Emily, refine the plan. Robert, get our primitive systems ready. Rachel, prep every nuclear weapon we have. In 6 hours, we're going to remind the galaxy why humans were once the most feared species in space." He looked at each member of his crew, seeing the same mix of fear and determination in their eyes. "And if we're going down," he added, "we're taking their whole damn fleet with us." The Defiant drifted silently through the debris field, its engines dark. All around them floated the broken remains of Coalition warships. Daniel Cooper guided the ship with tiny bursts from the maneuvering thrusters, his hand steady despite the stress. "Another Void patrol passing above us," Emily whispered, though there was no need to be quiet in space. "They're not seeing us." Through the bridge viewport, they watched as massive black ships moved past them. The Void vessels seemed to swallow the light of nearby stars, their quantum drives leaving trails of dark energy. "Power readings holding at minimum," Robert reported from engineering. "We look just like any other piece of wreckage." Captain Miller stood behind Daniel's chair, watching their slow approach to the Void command ship. It hung in space like a dark star, surrounded by its fleet of destroyers. Ambassador Linda Hayes stood beside him, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. 2 hours until we reach firing position," Daniel said softly. Rachel spoke from her weapon station. "Nuclear torpedoes armed and ready. The old-style warheads are giving off so little energy, even I can barely detect them." Suddenly, ARIA's blue light flashed in warning. "Alert! Large object approaching on collision course." Through the viewport, they saw a massive piece of debris tumbling toward them, the broken hull of a Coalition dreadnought. At their low power setting, they couldn't move fast enough to avoid it. "If we power up to dodge, they'll detect us," Emily said quickly. Miller gripped Daniel's chair. "Can we take the hit?" "Not without our shields," Robert replied. "And if we raise shields, they'll see us," Miller finished. He looked at Daniel. "Mr. Cooper, do you still remember your Zero training?" Daniel smiled grimly. "Yes, sir." Everyone hold onto something. Instead of powering up the engines, Daniel fired precise bursts from the emergency air tanks, the most basic thrusters on the ship. The Defiant rolled sideways, letting the massive debris scrape past them with only inches to spare. "Damage report?" Miller asked as they stabilized. "Hull scratched but intact," Robert reported. "No power spike. They still haven't seen us." Linda let out a breath she'd been holding. Impressive piloting. They continued their slow drift toward the command ship. Hour by hour, they got closer to their target. The Void fleet moved around them, their advanced sensors blind to the primitive warship hiding in plain sight. "Sir," Emily called out softly, picking up communications between their ships. They're celebrating. They think they've won already. Miller nodded. They believe the galaxy has no hope left. Let them think that. As they approached their firing position, Rachel began her final weapons check. Nuclear torpedoes 1 through 6, armed and ready. Loading coordinates for maximum damage to their quantum network. Robert, Miller called over the comm. How are our engines? Ready for one last burn, Captain. We'll only get a few seconds at full power before they detect us, but it should be enough to get the torpedoes in range. Aria's voice was calm. 30 minutes to firing position. I have calculated the optimal firing solution. We will need to get within 1,000 kilometers of the command ship. The bridge fell silent as they watched the massive black ship grow larger in their viewport. Each crew member knew these were their final moments. The Defiant would not survive what came next. Message from the Coalition. Emily reported suddenly. Text only. It says, the combined fleets are ready. Give us a target. Linda smiled. The remains of our forces. They're waiting to attack as soon as the command ship goes down. Miller looked at his crew, Daniel's steady hands on the controls, Rachel's finger hovering over the weapons trigger, Emily monitoring the enemy fleet, Robert keeping their power hidden, and Aria's constant blue glow. They had come so far. This small crew in their obsolete ship. 10 minutes to firing position, Daniel reported. This is it, Miller said, standing tall. Our one chance. The Void Collective thinks they've won because they're more advanced, more powerful. They never considered that their greatest weakness would be their own advancement. He smiled. Let's remind them why humans never stopped keeping a few old weapons around. The Defiant crept closer to its target, a primitive wolf among quantum sheep, ready to show the galaxy that sometimes the oldest weapons were the deadliest. 5 minutes, Daniel whispered. Prepare for full power on my mark, Miller ordered. It's time to wake up our sleeping giant. Mark. Captain Miller's voice cut through the silence. The Defiant's engines roared to life. Daniel Cooper's hands flew across his controls, pushing the ship forward at full speed. They had seconds before the Void Collective detected them. Multiple enemy ships turning to face us, Emily reported, her voice tense. They're starting to realize we're here. Rachel Sullivan's fingers danced over the weapons console. Target locked. Nuclear torpedoes ready to fire. The massive Void command ship grew larger in their viewport. Its black surface seemed to drink in the starlight, making it look like a hole in space. Around it, enemy ships began to move. They're powering up weapons, Emily shouted. Not yet, Miller ordered, watching the distance counter. We need to get closer. Dark energy beams started firing from the nearest Void ships. Daniel rolled the Defiant between the attacks, using old combat maneuvers that the enemy's targeting computers couldn't predict. Their quantum AI can't track us, Aria reported. Our movements are too human. A blast rocked the ship. Robert's voice came over the comm. Direct hit. Shields holding, but barely. These old systems weren't meant to take quantum weapons. 800 kilometers to target, Daniel called out. 700, 600. Rachel's hands tightened on her controls. Sir, I have the shot. But, she hesitated. The main target is too well protected. Even our nukes might not do enough damage. Miller started to respond, but Linda Hayes stepped forward. Look. She pointed at the enemy command ship, the quantum network node. It's exposed. Emily's eyes widened. She's right. They're drawing power for their shields. The network connection is visible. That's it, Rachel said suddenly. Captain, if I adjust the torpedo spread, aim for that power conduit instead of the ship itself. Miller nodded quickly. Do it. Another hit shook the Defiant. Sparks flew from several consoles. Robert's voice crackled through the comm. We can't take another direct hit. 400 kilometers, Daniel reported. Enemy ships closing in from all sides. Rachel's hands moved fast, reprogramming the torpedo guidance. Sir, changing the target means changing the blast pattern. We'll have to be much closer than planned. How close? Miller asked. Rachel swallowed hard. 100 kilometers. Point-blank range. We'll be caught in our own nuclear blast. We were never making it out anyway, Miller reminded her. Make it count. The space around them filled with enemy fire. Daniel wove through it all, pushing the ship's old engines to their limit. The void ships, for all their advanced technology, couldn't predict the human pilot's instinctive moves. 200 kilometers, Daniel shouted. Enemy ships surrounding us. Multiple targets locking on, Araya reported. Probability of survival dropping rapidly. Emily looked up from her station. Sir, they're charging their main weapon. Through the viewport, they watched as the command ship's front split open, revealing a massive quantum cannon. Dark energy gathered at its tip, ready to tear the Defiant apart at the atomic level. 150 kilometers, Daniel called out. Rachel's finger hovered over the firing control. Almost in range. The quantum cannon finished charging. Emily's console screamed with warnings. They're firing. Now, Miller ordered. Rachel pressed the button. 6 nuclear torpedoes launched from the Defiant's tubes. Old-style weapons, simple in design, powered by technology that had barely changed in 300 years. The Void command ship's quantum shields flared up, ready to stop any advanced attack. But these weren't advanced weapons. These were human weapons. The torpedoes slipped through the quantum shields like they weren't even there. They streaked toward the exposed network node, their primitive nuclear warheads invisible to the enemy's advanced defenses. At that same moment, the command ship's quantum cannon fired. Brace for impact, Miller shouted. Time seemed to slow. The quantum beam reached for the Defiant just as the nuclear torpedoes reached their target. Rachel watched her weapons fly true, aimed at the one weak point in the enemy's perfect defense. In the final second before impact, she smiled. The Void Collective had forgotten one important thing about humans. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. The nuclear warheads detonated. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. The Defiant's nuclear warheads detonated at the exact moment the quantum beam reached them. For one breathtaking second, primitive atomic fire met advanced quantum energy. The quantum beam flickered and died. Direct hit. Rachel screamed over the roar of the ship's training engines. Nuclear detonation successful. On the bridge viewport, they watched as their simple nuclear weapons tore through the command ship's exposed network node. The massive vessel's quantum shields, designed to stop the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, did nothing to prevent 20th century nuclear physics from ripping apart their power core. The quantum network. Emily's voice rose with excitement. It's overloading. The surge is spreading to all connected ships. Around them, the Void fleet began to break apart. Their own advanced systems turned against them as the power surge raced through their quantum network. Ships started exploding, their delicate quantum cores unable to handle the primitive nuclear energy coursing through their systems. We did it, Linda whispered, watching the destruction spread. They never expected. They never thought. Multiple hull breaches. Robert's voice crackled through the failing comm system. Nuclear radiation from our own weapons is breaking through. We've got minutes at best. Miller grabbed the ship-wide comm. All hands. Emergency pods. Get to the... The rest of his order was cut off as another explosion rocked the ship. Araya's blue light flickered dangerously. Captain, the AI's voice was unusually soft. I calculate that the quantum beam grazed our port side before the torpedoes hit. The damage is catastrophic. Daniel looked up from his dead navigation controls. We're caught in the command ship's gravity well. No power to engines. And the escape pods? Miller asked, already knowing the answer. Destroyed in the initial blast, Araya confirmed. Rachel stood from her weapon station, moving to the viewport. Outside, The massive Void command ship was breaking apart, taking its fleet with it. At least we took them with us. Emily's console sparked, but still worked. Sir, coalition ships are jumping in. They're engaging the remaining Void vessels. Through the failing viewport, they watched as coalition warships appeared by the hundreds, striking at the few Void ships that survived the network overload. Without their quantum advantages, the enemy fleet was helpless. Incoming transmission, Araya announced. From Coalition Command. The message played through crackling speakers. UES Defiant. This is Admiral Zaxtal. We're launching rescue ships. Hold on. Miller looked around his bridge. Fires burned through broken panels. The air was getting thin. Warning lights flashed everywhere. They all knew rescue would come too late. Send our sensor data to the Coalition, he ordered. Let them know exactly how we did this, how humanity's primitive weapons brought down their advanced fleet. Transmitting now, Araya confirmed. Captain, it has been an honor. Linda stepped forward, her diplomatic composure finally breaking. You've saved us all. The galaxy will never forget. Sir, Emily called out softly. The command ship, it's going critical. Massive quantum detonation building. Miller sat in his captain's chair one last time. Around him, his crew moved to their stations, proud even in their final moments. Send one last message to the Coalition, Emily. Ready. Sir. Miller smiled as he watched the Void Collective's mighty fleet die, destroyed by the very primitiveness they had despised. Message begins to all ships. The galaxy's hope didn't fade today. Theirs did. Remember, sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Defiant out. The bridge grew quiet except for the sound of failing systems. Through the viewport, they watched the massive quantum detonation begin to build in the dying command ship. It was a good plan, Rachel said softly. It was a human plan, Robert corrected with a grin. Simple, primitive, perfect. Daniel laughed from his seat. Imagine their faces when they realized they'd been beaten by nuclear weapons. Their own arrogance defeated them, Linda added. They became so advanced, they forgot the basics. AI, Miller called out. Ship status. The AI's light pulsed one last time. All systems critical. Hull integrity failing. But Captain, we won. The quantum detonation from the command ship reached out for them. In their final moments, the crew of the Defiant stood proud. They had proved that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in advanced technology or powerful weapons. It was in remembering where they came from, in keeping the old ways alive, in being, until the very end, simply human. The light reached them. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. Never underestimate the primitive weapons of a species that had survived its own nuclear age. The Void Collective's hope had faded indeed.